Every single day, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're training something. The question is, are you training it deliberately? Let's talk about 5 things you must work on daily, not once a week, not when you feel inspired daily. Because the brain, the nervous system, your psychology, their activity, dependent, they're shaped by repetition, and they only adapt when you provide a consistent signal. So let's give the system a signal worth adapting to. In today's world, distraction isn't a problem, it's the default. Your attention is under siege, but your ability to focus is not fixed, it's plastic. That means it can be trained. Start every day by reclaiming your attention. 1 block of uninterrupted, focused work, even 20 minutes, tells your brain this is important. Over time, you're not just getting better at your task, you're rewiring your brain to increase baseline dopamine, frontal cortex activation, and attentional control. Don't just hope for clarity, train it. Neuroplasticity is the brain's remarkable ability to change and adapt, not only structurally, but functionally in response to experience, behavior, and environment. It is not a passive process that unfolds automatically. It is activity dependent. In other words, what you repeatedly do, what you practice, where you direct your attention, how you engage with challenges. These are the signals that tell your nervous system what matters. The neurons that fire together wire together, which means that every action, thought, or pattern you engage in consistently leaves a physical imprint on your brain's architecture. Over time, your brain becomes a mirror of your habits. This principle is both a powerful tool and a serious responsibility because it means that the version of yourself you are creating is directly linked to what you are doing or not doing every single day. Understanding this mechanism at a biological level helps shift the conversation from motivation to behavior. Many people wait to feel inspired, thinking that mental clarity or discipline is a product of willpower alone. But the truth is neuroplasticity doesn't wait for motivation. It waits for repetition. It responds to frequency, intensity, and specificity. When you engage in focused effort, whether it's learning a skill, building emotional resilience, or reshaping your thought patterns, the brain responds by strengthening the synaptic connections involved in those tasks. This is how new behaviors become automatic, how mindset shifts become permanent, and how you break cycles of procrastination, anxiety, or self-doubt. You don't think your way out of old wiring, you act your way into new wiring. This also explains why change is hard. Your current patterns, even the ones that don't serve you, have neural real estate. They are biologically comfortable because the brain always seeks efficiency. It wants to conserve energy by defaulting to established pathways. To change those defaults, you must deliberately interrupt them with new behavior, done repeatedly and with awareness. That's where discomfort often shows up, not because change is impossible, but because your brain is literally working against efficiency while it's building a new pathway. Think of it like trailblazing through thick forest instead of walking a worn path. That takes effort, intention, and time. But with consistent practice, the new path becomes the preferred route. Importantly, not all activity leads to plasticity. Passive consumption, like scrolling or mindlessly repeating the same task, doesn't stimulate meaningful change. For neuroplasticity to truly take hold, you need focused attention and some degree of challenge. The brain needs to register that this input is significant. That's why deep work, deliberate practice, and goal-oriented learning are so effective. They signal to the brain, this matters, adapt accordingly. On the flip side, chronic distraction and fragmented attention train the brain to become better at those patterns too. If your day is spent in a state of cognitive switching, constantly reacting rather than focusing, your brain becomes optimized for short-term stimulation and poor depth of thought. Again, what you do daily is what your brain becomes. What makes this empowering is that even small, consistent changes matter. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. 1 block of focused work, 1 mindful conversation, 1 deliberate choice to act differently. These begin laying down new neural pathways, and over time, with repetition and intention, those small inputs compound into meaningful transformation. Your brain is listening. Every behavior you choose, especially the ones you repeat, is a vote for the person you are becoming. So the question is, what kind of brain are you building? The answer lies not in what you plan to do someday, but in what you work on today and every day. Stress will come. That's a given. But how you respond is a trained skill, not a personality trait. Each day, you need to engage in controlled stress, exercise, cold exposure, breath work, something that teaches your body, I can be in discomfort and stay in control. This isn't about toughness, it's about wiring resilience into your autonomic nervous system. You're not reducing stress, you're increasing your capacity to carry it. Stress is often portrayed as something entirely negative, something to be avoided or minimized at all costs. But from a biological and neurological standpoint, stress is not inherently harmful. In fact, it's essential. Stress is the body's way of mobilizing energy and attention to meet a demand. The problem arises not from stress itself, but from chronic, unmanaged, or misinterpreted stress. When stress is experienced without control, recovery, or regulation, it becomes toxic. But when stress is applied in a measured, intentional, and controllable way, it becomes a powerful tool for growth. This concept is known as stress calibration, and it's one of the most important systems you can train every day. Your nervous system, particularly the autonomic branch, governs how you respond to stress. The sympathetic system mobilizes you for action. It's the so-called fight or flight response. The parasympathetic system returns you to baseline, the rest and digest mode. A well-calibrated stress response is not one that avoids activation, but one that can switch effectively between arousal and recovery. People who excel under pressure, who remain calm during crisis, and who recover quickly from setbacks don't have less stress. They have a more adaptive, better trained nervous system. This is a skill. And like any skill, it requires deliberate practice. Each day, you have an opportunity to train your stress response. This doesn't mean putting yourself into extreme danger or chaos. It means engaging with controlled discomfort. Activities like high-intensity exercise, cold exposure, breath work, or even focused public speaking when done voluntarily stimulate your stress system in a way that tells your brain and body, I can be under pressure and still remain in control. These experiences help you expand your window of tolerance, the range of stress within which you can function effectively. Over time, your body learns that elevated heart rate, increased adrenaline, or mental strain do not necessarily signal a threat. This reframing is critical because it changes your relationship to stress. From a neuroscience perspective, controlled exposure to stress enhances the function of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and rational thought. When stress is unmanaged, the prefrontal cortex is overridden by older, reactive brain structures like the amygdala. But with training, your brain learns to keep the prefrontal cortex online even under load. This means better decisions, clearer thinking, and more effective emotional regulation in high-pressure environments. You become not just more resilient, you become more adaptive. Another important component of stress calibration is recovery. Stress is only productive when it is followed by restoration. Think of it like weight training. You break down the muscle in the gym, but you grow during recovery. The same is true of your nervous system. Daily stress exposure should be followed by downregulation techniques, controlled breathing, mindfulness, or non-sleep deep rest to NSDR. These practices signal safety to the body, restore balance to your nervous system, and ensure that you don't stay locked in a hypervigilant state. Without this deliberate recovery, even controlled stress can become dysregulating. Your stress response is one of the most trainable systems in your body. And in a world that grows more unpredictable, noisy, and fast-paced by the day, being able to stay grounded in the storm is not just an advantage. It's a necessity. When you learn to face discomfort deliberately, when you teach your body that pressure does not equal panic, you become more than just calm, you become capable. Every day that you step into controlled stress, recover wisely, and repeat the process, you are not just surviving stress, you're using it to shape a stronger, clearer, more resilient version of yourself. Movement is not just for your muscles, it's for your brain. When you move, you increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, enhance executive function, and modulate your mood, regulating neurochemistry. A daily practice of movement, walking, resistance training, yoga, sprinting, whatever form it takes, is not optional. It's foundational. The body is the instrument, and if the instrument is off, the music of your life is out of tune. Focus is not a fixed trait you're born with. It's a trainable skill, one that's shaped every day by your choices, habits, and environment. In a world saturated with information and interruptions, the ability to sustain attention on a single task is not only rare, but also biologically challenging. Yet this ability is fundamental to achieving deep work, critical thinking, creativity, and long-term success in any domain. Focus is governed by neural circuits primarily located in the prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain responsible for planning, impulse control, and decision-making. These circuits are plastic, meaning they can strengthen or weaken based on your behavior. If you want more focus, you need to train the brain the same way you train a muscle, with consistency, progressive difficulty, and intentional recovery. When you sit down to work, Your attention system receives a flood of competing signals: internal thoughts, external notifications, emotional states, and sensory inputs. Most people default to distraction because their brains have been conditioned to prefer novelty and stimulation over sustained effort. Dopamine, the neurochemical associated with motivation and reward, plays a major role here. In an untrained brain, dopamine spikes come from quick, easy hits, checking your phone, watching a video, switching tasks. Over time, this conditions the brain to expect rapid feedback and instant gratification. Deep focus becomes harder because it feels less rewarding in the short term. But here's the powerful truth: you can recondition your dopamine system through behavior. When you engage in hard, focused work without giving in to distraction and do it repeatedly, your brain starts linking dopamine to effort, not outcome. This builds a kind of internal drive that doesn't rely on motivation, but on trained circuitry. Training focus requires deliberate practice. One of the simplest and most effective methods is time-blocked single-task work, starting with as little as 20 to 30 minutes. During this time, you eliminate all unnecessary inputs. You close tabs, silence your phone, and protect the time as if it were a scheduled appointment. At first, your brain will resist. It will crave stimulation and escape. But this resistance is not a failure. It's part of the process. Each time you notice your attention drifting and bring it back to the task, you are literally strengthening the neural pathways that govern focus. That repetition, noticing, redirecting, staying present, is what changes the brain. Over weeks and months, what once felt mentally exhausting becomes natural. There's also a physiological component to focus. Your ability to concentrate is directly influenced by sleep quality, nutrition, hydration, and light exposure. The brain is a high-energy organ, and its attentional systems are highly sensitive to metabolic input. Morning exposure to natural light, moderate levels of physical movement, and stable blood sugar all contribute to a focused brain state. Conversely, chronic fatigue, dehydration, or poor circadian alignment degrade your capacity to focus, even if your intentions are strong. This means that training focus isn't just about what you do in front of your desk. It's about how you manage your entire physiology. When you start viewing focus as a full system skill, not just a mental effort, your results improve dramatically. Perhaps most importantly, the practice of focus reshapes how you relate to your goals. In the beginning, deep work feels like friction, like grinding through resistance. But over time, it becomes a source of flow, clarity, and self-respect. You start to trust yourself more because you've built the ability to sit with difficulty and stay consistent. This has a ripple effect across every area of life, from relationships to discipline to creativity. You become someone who can hold attention when others scatter it, who can stay with complexity when others bail out. That's not a personality trait. That's neuroplasticity in action. You trained your brain to serve your mission, and that changes everything. Intentional stillness is not about doing nothing. It's about creating space for the brain and body to reset, re-regulate, and realign. In a world that celebrates productivity and constant motion, stillness is often misunderstood as laziness or passivity. But biologically, stillness is one of the most active and strategic things you can engage in. The nervous system operates in rhythms, cycles of arousal and recovery, effort and release. When we are constantly in a state of sympathetic activation, the state of alertness, readiness, and even low-grade stress, we disrupt those rhythms. Over time, this imbalance leads to cognitive fatigue, emotional reactivity, and poor decision-making. Stillness is the corrective force. It signals to the body and brain that it's safe to slow down, to shift from defense into restoration, and to recover the capacity for deep thinking and emotional regulation. Neuroscience shows that intentional stillness, whether in the form of meditation, breathwork, visual anchoring, or mindful observation, actively downregulates the stress response. It stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, slowing the heart rate, reducing cortisol levels, and allowing for the activation of the prefrontal cortex. This shift from survival brain to executive brain is not theoretical. It can be measured in changes in brainwave activity and heart rate variability and in neurotransmitter balance. The most effective leaders, creators, and thinkers understand this clarity doesn't come from constant thinking. It comes from making space to let thought organize itself. Stillness, when done deliberately, becomes the mechanism for that internal organization. Intentional stillness also trains interception, the ability to sense what's happening inside your body. When you sit quietly and bring attention to your breath, your heartbeat, or the sensations in your chest or gut, you're strengthening a circuit that connects the brain to the body. This is crucial for emotional regulation. Most people aren't overwhelmed because life is too fast. They're overwhelmed because they've lost awareness of what's going on internally until it's too late. A regular practice of stillness helps you catch stress before it spirals, to notice tension before it becomes pain, and to return to baseline more quickly after emotional upheaval. It makes you responsive rather than reactive. That difference is everything, not only in performance, but in your relationships, your communication, and your leadership. One of the most overlooked benefits of stillness is its impact on creativity and problem solving. The brain's default mode network, the system that lights up during rest and introspection, plays a vital role in connecting ideas, imagining the future, and synthesizing information. When you're always on, that network is suppressed. You become linear, tactical, and narrowly focused. But when you create space, even just 5 or 10 minutes, the brain begins to access deeper associations and unexpected connections. This is why some of your best ideas come in the shower, during a walk, or when you're staring out a window. You didn't stop thinking, you stopped forcing. And in that non-forcing state, the mind reveals solutions you couldn't access through conscious effort alone. It's important to understand that stillness is not about escaping the world. It's not about zoning out or avoiding responsibilities. It's about building a practice of intentional pause, one that enhances your ability to engage with the world more powerfully. Even a few minutes of breath awareness or visual focus, such as staring at a fixed point in the distance without mental chatter, can reset your cognitive baseline. Over time, these practices recalibrate your internal state so you can carry a sense of grounded presence into high-stakes environments. You become the calm in the chaos, not by accident, but by design. Stillness isn't something you find, it's something you train. And when you train it daily, it becomes your superpower in a distracted and reactive world. Deliberate movement is far more than exercise for physical health. It is a fundamental driver of brain function, emotional regulation, and cognitive clarity. Movement is one of the most direct ways we influence our neurobiology on a daily basis. When you engage in physical activity, especially with intentional effort, you activate a cascade of neurochemical changes that enhance focus, elevate mood, and prime the brain for learning. These effects are not abstract, they are measurable, predictable, and powerful. Movement stimulates the release of key neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, chemicals involved in motivation, pleasure, mood stability, and alertness. Even short bouts of movement can shift your mental state dramatically, transforming fatigue into energy, anxiety into calm, and mental fog into clarity. At the structural level, movement increases blood flow to the brain, delivering oxygen and nutrients that enhance synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to form and strengthen connections. This is particularly important for learning and memory. Research has consistently shown that physical activity increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that acts like fertilizer for neurons. It supports the growth of new brain cells, enhances the resilience of existing ones, and promotes the formation of new neural pathways. When you move deliberately, whether it's walking, running, lifting, stretching, or practicing mobility, you're not just working your body, you're literally shaping the landscape of your mind. Movement also plays a critical role in regulating the stress response. Physical activity acts as a controlled stressor that helps train the body and brain to better manage psychological stress. It raises cortisol and adrenaline in a healthy, time-limited way, followed by a natural return to baseline. This rhythmic exposure and recovery builds resilience in the autonomic nervous system. It's the same reason why people who exercise regularly often report feeling more emotionally balanced and less reactive to daily stressors. Their nervous systems have been conditioned through movement to recover faster and stay more regulated under pressure. This benefit is most profound when movement is done with mindfulness, paying attention to breath, posture, effort, and sensation. This combination of physical effort and internal awareness creates a feedback loop that strengthens both the brain and body simultaneously. Deliberate movement is also a direct line to identity change. When you choose to move, especially when you don't feel like it, you send a powerful signal to your brain. I take action regardless of emotional state. This shift in internal narrative builds discipline, confidence, and agency. You no longer wait to feel good before taking action. You take action to feel good. Over time, this pattern rewires your motivation system to be internally driven. It reduces dependency on external stimuli and strengthens your sense of self-trust. You become someone who follows through, not occasionally, but consistently, because you've trained your body and mind to do hard things on purpose. Perhaps most importantly, movement connects you to the present moment. In a distracted world, physical activity is one of the few domains where mind and body naturally sync. You can't sprint while thinking about your emails. You can't deadlift while ruminating about the past. The physical demands of movement anchor you in the now, and in that anchoring, there is clarity. There is momentum. There is space for new decisions to emerge. This is why some of the most transformative insights come not in stillness, but in motion. The rhythm of breath, the beat of your steps, the push against resistance. These are not just physical experiences. They are signals to your nervous system that you are alive, capable, and evolving. Daily movement doesn't need to be extreme to be effective. What matters most is consistency, intention, and presence. Even 20 minutes of focused, deliberate activity, done without distraction, can reset your mental state and sharpen your cognitive edge. When movement becomes a non-negotiable part of your day, you gain access to a deeper level of vitality and mental clarity. You move your body, and in doing so, you move your entire life forward. Reflection is not simply about thinking back, it's about integrating experience into wisdom. In neuroscience terms, reflection activates the brain's default mode network, which plays a crucial role in self-awareness, emotional insight, and long-term planning. It's the system responsible for making meaning out of what we do, feel, and experience. Without regular reflection, experiences remain fragmented. You may take action, even achieve outcomes, but you miss the deeper insight about why things worked, how you responded, and what needs to shift moving forward. That's the role of reflection, to convert raw experience into structured learning and to use that learning to guide future behavior more intelligently and more consciously. From a biological perspective, the brain is always recording. Every decision, emotional reaction, and social interaction is imprinted into networks that influence future perception and response. But recording is not enough. You must review. Reflection helps bring unconscious patterns to the surface, patterns that would otherwise run on autopilot. When you pause and ask questions like, what did I do well today? Where did I feel resistance? Or what triggered emotional reactivity? You activate metacognition, thinking about your thinking. This ability to observe your own mental and behavioral patterns with detachment is a hallmark of high cognitive function and self-leadership. You become less reactive and more intentional, less entangled in your story, and more grounded in choice. Reflection is also where emotional processing occurs. The human brain stores unprocessed emotion as tension in the body and rumination in the mind. When you experience frustration, disappointment, or even success, that emotional energy needs resolution. Reflection allows for that. It gives you a space to name the feeling, identify its origin, and move it from a raw state into an integrated one. This doesn't mean overthinking or obsessing. It means checking in with honesty and curiosity. The brain needs closure, not in the form of final answers, but in understanding that allows you to move forward with clarity. Without reflection, emotions pile up beneath the surface, influencing behavior in ways you don't consciously understand. With reflection, they become data, feedback for growth, not fuel for confusion. Regular reflection also improves future performance. When you examine your wins, you reinforce the neural pathways associated with success, confidence, clarity, and strategy. When you examine your mistakes, you shift from shame to structure. What didn't work, and what can I do differently? This converts error into instruction, which is one of the most valuable forms of learning. The brain thrives on feedback loops, and daily reflection closes the loop between action and learning. This practice rewires the reward system away from external validation and toward internal alignment. You begin to measure your success not just by outcome, but by self-awareness, integrity, and alignment with your values. Reflection doesn't need to be complex or time-consuming. It can be as simple as 5 minutes of journaling, a few minutes of quiet questioning at the end of the day, or a voice note you record for yourself. The key is consistency and depth. Surface-level summaries won't rewire anything, but honest, even uncomfortable reflection, done with compassion and curiosity, creates change at the level of identity. You stop being a passive experiencer of life and become an active participant in your own development. You're no longer living on automatic pilot. You're steering, adjusting, learning. You become your own feedback system, self-correcting, self-guiding, self-evolving. Ultimately, reflection is what separates motion from progress. You can do a lot, move fast, and still be misaligned. But when you reflect, you create the space to ask if your actions match your values, if your energy is going where it matters most, and if your current path is leading you somewhere worth going. Reflection is not just review, it is recalibration. It is how you take responsibility not just for what happens to you, but for what you become through it. And that done daily transforms your life from reaction to creation.